Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Firstly, thank you very much for accepting my invitation and accepting to be on my show.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Just a pleasure.
So, I've gone through your profile. I came to know that you are a Azure cloud architect. So, I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing to my audience.
Yeah, sure. Let me just. So, my name's Gregor Suttie, and I live in Scotland, which is in the UK, just above England. I am an Azure architect for a company called Intercept, and that's in the Netherlands. So I work remotely. I sit in the house and work remotely, so that's quite good. I've been doing Azure for 3 years, four now actually. This is my fourth year. I'm an Azure MVP, so I'm a Microsoft MVP in Azure, and I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. So over the last 4 years, well, if I go back 4 years, I had no experience in Azure at all. And then I was working at a bank in Glasgow, and everybody started moving towards the cloud, and obviously technology was kind of heading that way. And I thought, yeah, it's time to get on the journey of learning the cloud. So having a Microsoft background, so I've been a developer for 20 odd years. I think I've been in IT for 25 years now. So I'm 45, so I've been in IT for 25 years, mostly as a developer, kind of doing .NET development, VB6 all the way back. A lot about DevOps, SQL Server, that kind of data stuff. So I've got a varied background of roles. Been a dev manager, my last job as well, so a development manager. And yeah, just kind of been doing that. Got started in Azure. Decided to try and do the exams to start off with because Azure is a very big subject and it's quite difficult to know where to start. So before the Azure Fundamentals exam was out, that wasn't a thing when I started. So if anyone's listening and wanting to get into Azure, then definitely have a look at the Azure Fundamentals exams. Definitely the AZ900 is always a good route to start. So people always ask, how do you get started learning cloud and learning Azure? So if you're going to do that, head to Microsoft Learn as well. Microsoft have a really great learning resource where you can go and learn all about the different various options for doing exams and learning all about Azure. So that's kind of how I got started learning Azure. I actually failed. I failed the first two exams that I sat because I wasn't doing hands-on. I wasn't deploying stuff and trying stuff. I was just reading about it. So I was trying to read blog posts and Microsoft Learn and kind of all the Microsoft Docs web pages. And that's not a good way to learn for me. I'm a kind of hands-on person, and a lot of people are probably a hands-on learner. So I learned from failing two exams. I wasn't downhearted though, because when I failed those exams, I realised I had learned quite a lot from where I had originally came from. I think I just failed both exams. So I was trying to do the AZ100 and I can't remember what the other one was, but the Azure Administrator exams were the ones I started with. Now I'm a developer, so I found them quite difficult. But the point being is, if you want to learn Azure, I would recommend you get hands-on. There's lots of really great resources for learning Azure going forward. Microsoft Learn is obviously one, but definitely get hands-on in the portal, build stuff, create resources, and just try them, and you'll learn a lot more than you will reading about them. I made the mistake of trying to learn Azure by reading it, and it wasn't very good. So yeah, that's really me. I didn't really do computing at college. I kind of did a little bit of computing at college. I went to university here in Scotland for 1 year, but I didn't really do computing. So kind of self-taught developer. I started my very first company with no development experience, and I was fortunate to work next to a lovely lady who taught me how to be a good developer and how to write tests and kind of do things properly. So that's kind of my background. Yeah.
So, can you tell me your recent projects as an architect?
Yeah. So lots of projects going on here at Intercept. I'm currently working for a Dutch company, and we're replacing a service bus, an enterprise service bus that they've got, and we're replacing that with Azure Service Bus, which is cool. So it's a very large company. It's they've never really used Azure, so we're trying to kind of help them get started in Azure. And if you're new to Azure, I highly recommend you look at something called it's the what's it called again? The cloud. I forget the name of it. Let me just remember the name. I always forget this. the Cloud Adoption Framework. I always forget that name. Yeah, the Cloud Adoption Framework is a framework written by Microsoft, which will help companies set up Azure, get into Azure as well. So if you're already using Azure, you can look at this really good resource online, and it'll teach you how to get up to speed with Azure. Even if you're in Azure, it'll teach you how to do governance. So governance is all about setting your Azure your environment up correctly, making sure that it's good naming conventions, it's tidy, so you don't have resources lying all over the place. You give people only the permissions that they need. So we've been teaching them all this governance stuff, and we've been putting things like Azure policy in place so that the development team can't just deploy anywhere in the world, and they can't spin up virtual machines that are quite expensive and leave them running. So we've put all these Azure policies in place for this company, and teaching them how to use Azure as they go, which has been pretty interesting. Lots of companies really don't do Azure governance well, so my recommendation would always be try and have naming conventions, a bit like when you write code. If you've got naming conventions for how you might you might create folders with certain names. It's the same in Azure. You should really have resource groups with a naming convention that matches the project you're working on, just so that things stay tidy, and you've got good practices going forward. I'm always trying to help customers do things properly. And if you haven't done that and your company's in Azure and they don't have Azure policy and kind of governance in place, you can always put it in place after the fact. So if you've got some resources and it's kind of a little bit untidy, you can still go into the Azure environment and tidy it up. But we've been helping them quite a lot. And we're also doing quite a bit of container work as well now. So we're starting to head in towards containers. They're kind of starting to write microservices, which is quite cool. They're going to do that, and then they're going to try and put microservices into AKS. But they don't know any of this, so we're kind of trying to hold their hands and try and help them learn as we're learning as well. So we're kind of trying to learn together as we help this company get into the cloud and into containers and Azure. But the key thing I'm talking about here is governance is very important. At my company, we do quite a lot of workshops on governance, and it's quite interesting to see the number of customers who don't use things like Azure Resource Explorer, Resource Graph Explorer. So that's a very cool tool for being able to see what resources you have in your environment. So some of our customers have multiple subscriptions and thousands of Azure resources, and they always ask, how do we get a view to see what we've got? And you can use Azure Resource Graph Explorer to create a dashboard that will just show you like how many SQL servers you've got, how many virtual machines you've got, what types of resources you've got, and how much they cost. So that's kind of what I've been working on recently.
So tell me, you as a Azure trainer.
Yes. So as an MCT, we give workshops. So one of the things we do at Intercept is we give workshops on things like Azure fundamentals. We do it on GitHub fundamentals. We do it on Azure governance and policies. Did one today actually for German customers. And we also do cost management. So what we tend to see is what I was talking about. A lot of customers want to get into the cloud but don't know how to start. That's the hardest part. So it's like when you try a new programming language, you're not really sure how to start. So the Azure governance piece is the most important. So we do a lot of workshops for customers. And what they do is they kind of come along. We've got a Teams invite. We'll maybe send an email out to like 25 customers, and maybe 50 people will turn up, and I give a workshop where I'll just go over a set of slides, and we allow the customers to ask questions, and they kind of go back and forth with questions and answers, just so people can get a good understanding and a good grasp of Azure. Because you know what it's like. You work with AWS. The cloud's a big thing. It's really quite a lot to learn and take in to begin with. But if you can start correctly, it's a good foundation. It's like building a house. If you've got good foundations, then you're on a good. You're probably going to build a decent house. But if you start off and you've not got governance in place, you might see things like developers spinning up very expensive virtual machines and leaving them running, or SQL Server or Azure Synapse, all these other expensive Azure resources. You want to make sure that people don't spin them up and leave them running, because what they end up getting is what's called a bill shock. And at the end of the month, you think you're going to get a bill for a couple of $1,000, and it's like $10,000 because people have just left things on. So as part of the governance, we put in budgets for each customer. So you can roughly work out after a couple of months what their monthly bill should be. So say your bill's roughly $8,000, for example. We could put in a budget of say 9,000 or 10,000, and after every now and again it'll kind of check that and it'll tell you if you're on trend to kind of go over that, and if you are, it'll send you an email to kind of alert you that you're about to blow your budget. So lots of things like that in workshops, but it's really interesting working with people and getting to ask questions, because a lot of people are in Azure but don't really understand governance. So it's worth learning about governance. It's a good skill to have.
So, as a trainer, how do you help to the people who knows the AWS cloud fundamentals and who want to move to Azure cloud? And how do you train? Because I'm asking question because I'm that is my question and that is for myself. I took training. I know the fundamentals, how to create a virtual machines and how to manage some of the services, cloud services. So as a enthusiast, I want to learn. I want to enter into Azure cloud, and I want like great trainers like you who are into tech world for a long time. How do you teach me and make me become a great in cloud?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I always think hands-on learning is the best way to go. So if I was asking you to try and learn, like say serverless, for example, if you wanted to learn Azure serverless or virtual machines, I would basically say try and create a free account. So you can create free accounts. Obviously, don't cost anything. You can spin up, I think you get like $150 a month worth of Azure resources. Look at Microsoft Learn and kind of focus on the area that you want to learn around. So Microsoft Learn has lots of courses on a huge topic, which is Azure. So if you wanted to choose virtual machines, you could go and learn about virtual machines there. But definitely play about with it hands-on. I always think that you won't learn anything just from listening to me telling you stuff or reading about things. You need to kind of crack open the Azure portal, find a hands-on lab. There's loads of free Microsoft hands-on labs that will take you like in a GitHub repo that will say, right, step 1, log in, step 2, create a virtual machine, here's all the settings, and just play with it. Don't just follow the workshop. Deviate from it and try different things and see how much it costs, and just learn to play with it. I always think it's a bit like learning to fly a plane. You could read about learning to fly a plane and go online and learn all about it, but you've never sat in a cockpit of a plane. And then if you went to sit in the cockpit of a plane and try and fly it, I think you would really struggle. And people who learn to become pilots have to have 1,000 hours up in the air in a cockpit before they'll get their license. And I think it's like that learning Azure. I think you need to spend time in the cockpit, just in the portal, learning it. There's no real other shortcut to it. And I wouldn't suggest there is a shortcut at all. You just need to try it. If you try and just read about it, you'll not really get very far. So I would recommend you try things. A good thing to do is try and find a project, like an internal project or something that interests you, and try and build like a virtual machine that you can run a website on for your blog, for example. That's always a good idea if you want to play about with virtual machines. Have an idea of something that you might want to try and build, and go from there. So as a trainer, I would basically just give you a workshop to do, and I would sit with you and get you to run through the workshop, but ask you to try different settings and just try different things. And then at the end, we'll see how you get on. I think just hands-on is the way to learn. Yeah.
So you work on architecture, the cloud architecture. So what actually makes you to do this work, and what is your favorite thing when you wake up in the morning and you want to create something which has not existed before? It is your how what drives you to create something? You know, you have projects in front of you,
Yeah.
and you have to create something that you have to use your mind. So how you do that?
Yeah. So the best part of my job is doing designs, I think, and implement them. So at Intercept, we have an onboarding team. That's the name of our team. So we have salespeople who go out to customers and work out what they want to do. And a lot of customers want to move from on-premise. They might have SQL servers or virtual machines that they want to move into Azure. So our first step is to come up with a design. So we'll jump on a call and speak to them and try and get the details out of what they want and what they currently have. So that takes a couple of calls to figure out what they need, and then we go ahead and put a design together. So we'll try and design what we think that looks like in Azure, and then we'll go back to them and have a bit of toing and froing, going back, and then once we have the design signed off, then that's actually my favourite part, is designing what I think they need. It's quite interesting when you talk to customers who have like environments on premise, and you tell them that do you have any disaster recovery, and they're like, no. So things like that are always quite interesting when you talk about disaster recovery, and everyone thinks the cloud's really expensive, but I always end up saying, well, if you try and do this on premise, it's even more expensive because it will take a lot more time and a lot more money to do most of the time. Like if you have one SQL server or one web server, and the one web server goes down, in Azure you can just spin that up to two, but you would have to go out and buy the kit and set all that up and spend the time looking after it all. And a lot of the Azure services are managed, so the people do all that for you. So you're not spending time and hiring lots of people to look after this stuff because it's already on Azure. So my favorite part is creating the design, but the best part after that is actually implementing it. So what we do next is once we've had the design signed off, we actually use infrastructure as code. So we write templates to spin this environment up. So we'll create the Azure policies, we'll create the naming conventions, and we'll create the subscription, and we'll put all the resources in resource groups. And depending on what the customer wants, we normally recommend you have a dev test environment, a kind of acceptance environment, and a production environment. Now, not everybody always wants all that because it's quite expensive. But if the bigger companies, then you definitely want to go for that. So the favorite part of my job and what keeps me going is customers coming to us looking for help, because I'm always about helping people. I like to help people and actually helping them build out their systems. But we don't just deploy it and then leave them. We kind of show them what we're doing and get them to help so that we're giving them the knowledge back. We're showing them why Azure policies are good and why the governance needs to be in place. Because a lot of people will create resources manually. And then the big thing about creating resources manually is if I delete that resource, I don't know what settings you've put in manually, but if I've got infrastructure as code, then all these resources are built from ARM templates or bicep templates that are stored in source control, so that if you delete the resource group by accident, I can press a button and bring it all back, and it'll run a pipeline in Azure DevOps and restore the entire environment, which is really, really nice thing to have. It's very powerful to have, and everyone should kind of go down that route. You really want to have your infrastructure as code. So that'd be Terraform, Pulumi, Bicep, ARM templates. Don't really care how you do it, but it's a really good thing to have and learn. Quite an interesting thing to learn about. Yeah. So that's my favourite parts, is doing the design and then implementing it.
So do you understand all the services that are there in Azure?
No, I don't think anyone does, to be honest. There's something like 700. So our team are split across quite a lot of things. We've got one guy who's really good at networking. We've got a guy who's really good at containers. I do the dev stuff, so I kind of cover Azure data stuff. I kind of cover development, so C#, Python, .NET framework, that kind of stuff. I also cover serverless and some database stuff. I kind of do all that stuff, but we've got 4 or 5 people across the team who have got skills in different areas. I know nothing about Azure networking, and as an architect, a lot of people are surprised by that. But yeah, that's just not my thing. Because I have a dev background, I get all the questions from how do I set up Azure DevOps, how do I set up web apps, all that kind of dev stuff. I can answer that. And if it's networking, then I go and ask Carol, and if it's containers, we'll go and ask Wesley and Richard. So we've got skills across the board. I don't think anyone should ever try and learn all of Azure. So even when you're starting in Azure, it's important to kind of look at the exams, because the exams, you can focus on an area. So if you're a dev, you can focus on the dev stuff. If you're into Power Platform, you can go and do that. If you've got an ops background, you can go and look at server stuff and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? You kind of need to find your area and stick with that. You can learn other stuff, but you're never going to learn it all. I wouldn't never try and learn all of Azure. I don't think anyone could really do that. It's just, the other thing is keeping up to date. All these resources are updated daily, weekly, monthly. So keeping up to date with anything is really, really difficult. So yeah, like Kubernetes changes like every 2 days. So if you're concentrating on AKS, then that's just one thing that will keep you busy forever. you wouldn't be able to go and learn everything else. You just would not. It would not be able to cope with that. So I'm sure it's the same in Amazon and AWS. There's lots of new services updated regularly. Yeah.
So after collecting the requirements of the client of the project, how do you think in order to create the architecture of the on-premise the entire resource the entire resources,
Yeah.
how will be your thinking? What is your first thought?
Yeah, it's difficult. So it depends on what the customer. Sometimes I start off with what does the customer have. So sometimes it's easy when they've got like an on-premise SQL server. So you can ask them what is the specification of that server. What is it built from? Is it like 16 gig, two CPUs, that kind of thing? You kind of get an idea of what they've got currently. You can use Azure Migrate, which is basically you can look at an on-premise environment and it'll give you a recommendation for what you can move into Azure. So you can use Azure Migrate. It's not something I do. There's a couple of other people on our team would do that. So I kind of look at what they've got currently, or what do they think they need. Sometimes people haven't got anything locally and they just want to start off in Azure, and that can be quite tricky. So the design is never really a closed design. I don't think I've ever written a design that's actually went to Azure production and hasn't changed. Usually the designs change over time. So you might think you need this feature, but you actually don't. You need something more powerful. So it's an always evolving design. So you try and put your best guess together about what size of virtual machine they want or what SQL server they want. You'll have to always think about things like costs. What can they afford? What do they need? A lot of people will tell you that I would need a SQL server, but they don't think about backups and they don't think about disaster recovery. And once you start bringing all that in, it can get a little bit expensive. So you've just got to kind of weigh expectation up with what you think will meet the needs of the requirements. It's tricky. It is tricky. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's fun. I love it. But as I said, the design will change over time, always. Yeah.
So how will be your discussions with the DevOps engineer and other engineers in order to make the things possible?
Yeah, so I kind of have a DevOps background. I've passed all the DevOps exams, and DevOps is a big thing for me. I did it previous jobs. I always say that you need to have, well, we kind of recommend that customers use Azure DevOps for a start. So we want them to put their code into either GitHub, GitLab, or Azure DevOps for a start. That's always a good thing. And then we build the pipelines as YAML. So we have YAML pipelines that will build the code, test the code, and then publish it to Azure. Now we try and use YAML pipelines so that the pipelines itself are in code, and then you can keep that in the repo so that if anyone makes a change by mistake, you can always revert it. Previous versions of Azure DevOps, it was a GUI front end where you had like images instead of, it wasn't stored at all. So if someone came along and changed that, then you had no way to go back to what it was previous. So Azure DevOps brought in YAML pipelines. So that's to do with the build of the code and the publishing of the code. So if you like build an Azure container, for example, or a Docker container, you put that in the pipeline, you build the code from the repo, the Azure repo, build the code, test it, and then deploy it to Azure, all from within Azure DevOps. Now I tend to walk through what I'm doing with customers because I don't want to deploy their solution and then they don't understand it. That's not what I want to happen. I want them to understand it, but sometimes I'll show them how to go about it and I'll get them to do it. So I'll ask them to kind of walk through it. And the really nice part about Azure DevOps is the wiki. So the documentation for the build pipeline and the code and the whole project, in my opinion, should go in the wiki. So that if a new person joins that team, then they can go here. They've got one place to go and find out as much information as they can about the build pipeline, about the code, about the design as well. The design for the solution, so that everything is in this one place, including usernames, passwords. You can do all sorts of things in the wiki and have all the build pipelines and just put all that in one place. And I think that's quite an important part. Previously, when you did this on-premise, you would have a tool for documentation, you'd have a tool for build pipelines, and you'd have a tool for doing all the tasks in the sprints. And it was all different, like Jira, all different tools. But Azure DevOps, you can do the whole thing in one, and GitHub's kind of going the same way. GitHub Actions and GitHub discussions and issues is kind of heading in the same direction as Azure DevOps. It's actually the same people who built Azure DevOps is now on the GitHub team, and they're kind of building the same thing out. So it's important to, I think it's important to build things in helping the team that you're working with. Don't just build it and then leave and move on to another project. It's important for us to give the customer help in understanding what they've got. I don't like where people build things for customers and then leave. Building a pipeline in Azure and then leaving it is not really what we want to do. Yeah.
So before 4 years, you are into development. You spent a lot of time in software development. I'm sure you might have involved in a lot of projects with which came from it can be different used in different industries in the world. So how that development experience is helping you in creating and being a great architect?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've been really lucky. So my very first job, the lady who taught me how to code showed me how to write tests. Now, if you're a developer, a lot of developers can't write tests, good tests. And I was very fortunate to be shown how to do test-driven development. So when I write code, I write tests, which is very important. So that was one thing that I learned. I also learned about 3 jobs ago how to do things properly. I had a boss who was quite strict. Wasn't a very nice person, I can say that, but he was very good at doing best practices. So we used to use a tool called MCT to do our DevOps builds, to build the code and pipelines and run tests. And one day the license expired for MCT, so we couldn't use the tool. And from that day onwards, he said, right, we're going to get it that we have to build everything locally. So we won't rely on any tools that you can pay for. You have to run it all and build the code, run the tests, and check everything works locally. So what I'm saying is I've had really good people that I've worked with, and I've managed to gain a lot of experience from working with all types of different people. I've worked at banks, I've worked in healthcare, and depending on where you work, you learn different things. But the main thing is to try and remain open, try and remain teachable. My big thing is learning. I've always had a passion for wanting to learn something, and it's not always learn the next thing. It's just try and learn something, and also help people. I'm a big firm believer in if you can help people and give back, then that's good. I have a lot of experience, so even in my own job just now, I can talk about things that people haven't experienced because I've just been there and done it. And it's not a big-headed thing. It's just I've seen issues and problems and how to go about fixing them and things like that. So I've had a lot of good experience working with a lot of experienced people. So I've been very fortunate. Yeah.
Is there any particular point that you don't understand about Azure Cloud?
Networking. Yeah, I'm not a networking person. I've never been a networking people. I think developers don't really get networking as a whole. I'm not saying all developers don't get networking, but yeah, networking's not a thing I've ever done. So when I've been sitting the Azure exams and it's asking me like, what is the IP address for this or the IP range and stuff, I really don't get that. It's not my thing. It's just I've just managed to steer clear of it. That's one thing that I've not really touched on. So I'm more a developer kind of guy, back end server ops type stuff, not really my thing at all. So yeah, if you had to ask me to do a bit of architecting on networking, I would really struggle, which is surprising because a lot of people think the architects should know networking, and they probably should. I'd imagine most architects do know networking. I don't. I really don't. I know development stuff, so I've got a different background to most people for architects.
So how your communication skills are helping you to become, be a great architect?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's interesting. When I go on calls, I tell people open and honestly, I don't know everything. I think it's important to be honest. Not everyone's going to be able to answer all the questions. I always tell customers, if you ask a question and I don't know, I'll find someone who does in the company and I'll get back to you. I think that's quite important. It's also important to just try and be reasonable and try and be a nice person. You need to try and communicate well and be honest and just say things like, if I don't know, I'll find out. But also don't just be yourself. What else is a good thing? Communication skills. Yeah, just talk from experience. I think it's a good thing as well. Don't have an ego is one thing. I don't really like working with people who think they know better. I don't know better than anyone, but I just talk from experience. Like, I can tell you this might be better than that because of this reason. If you've got a reason, then that's fine. But I don't think people I don't like when people say experts. Like, I don't think anyone's an expert, to be honest with you. Nobody knows everything about a certain subject. They might know a lot, but there's always someone knows more than you. So just be humble. And just try and communicate openly as much as you can with customers. And I think customers appreciate you just being real with them. Sometimes customers complain about the cost. So when we do a design, we give the costs of the Azure resources we're going to use. And what we do is we go to the Azure calculator and we just take a screenshot of it and we put it in the design. And I always tell customers, look, this is the price that's in the Azure portal that you'll pay. We don't add anything onto that. And a lot of customers will be quite surprised by that, but being open and honest, they really love the fact that we're not doing that. We are charging what we are charging, which is what, if the Azure Portal SQL Server costs £1,000 a month, that's what we would charge. So I think being honest and being open is probably the best thing you can do. Even in life, just try and be honest. Don't try and cover up stuff. If you don't know something, just be honest and tell people. I never ever try and answer a question that I don't know by just thinking I can like blag my way through it. I don't do that. That's not a good thing to do. Not a fan of that either. Yeah.
I'm just seeing. I just attended the training classes of AWS, and they gave me like 15 videos in which they taught me all the fundamental services of cloud. So I'm just seeing and I'm listening to the training classes, and I'm just understanding by myself. I'm just writing in the form of words in my personal website. So the interesting point that you experienced and you mentioned is hands-on work is very important. Just reading then that will not help for people to become a cloud engineer or be a good cloud architect or anything when it comes to cloud. So can you tell more about it? Difference between understanding orally and implementing it practically?
Yeah, I think when you do hands-on labs, you're just kind of trying different things. It's a bit like driving a car and you read a manual. Like, you would read the manual and you would start the engine and you would just drive, but that's not a real world experience. If you learn to drive from reading, you wouldn't really understand. You'd get in the car and probably panic. You'd turn the key and go, what do I need to do? You might understand that you need to put it in gear and kind of indicate and stuff like that, but there's nothing like doing hands-on. So actually sitting at the computer with the Azure portal in front of you, spin up a VM, try things, change the size of the VM, stop it, start it, add extensions to it, do all sorts of things that you think people might need or you want to try out, and just see what works and what doesn't work. And you'll learn from your mistakes. That's the big thing about that. You'll probably create a virtual machine and leave it running, and it'll cost money overnight, and you'll forget. And you come back the next day and you realize that you've left the virtual machine on and you've just spent like maybe $50 or something like that. You only learn from doing that the hard way. You wouldn't learn from doing that from reading. You know what I mean? You've got to learn from your mistakes. And I think personally, for me, I've learned from making a lot of mistakes, just trying things and it doesn't work, and then you can delete the resource and then recreate it. Things like virtual machines are quite good to try and play about with. So yeah, hands-on learning for me, it's just about what works and what doesn't work, rather than reading it in a book. A book will tell you how to do it like correctly, but you won't learn what doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, if you create an Azure storage account, there's a rule between what you can call the Azure storage account. So it's like between 0 and 26 letters without any hyphens or anything like that. You won't know that until you try and create an Azure storage account and call it demo test storage, and then it'll say you can't do that. You wouldn't really learn that from a book. You wouldn't remember it. But the minute you try and create a storage account and it comes up and says this is the wrong name due to the naming conventions, you'll think, all right, okay. and it'll stick with you a bit more. So the more repetition as well, the more times you're in the portal building stuff and creating things, the more it will stick. If you reread something, it will stick, but it's just not the same. It's just not the same. Yeah. I guess it's like learning to swim. You could learn to swim by reading a book and thinking, right, okay, so I need to do this and do that. But you jump in the water after learning about to swim about reading it in a book, and I'm sure you'll probably struggle. You won't learn to swim from just reading it in a book.
So the two people in you, 25 years of the technologist, 25 years of a non-technologist. So the person who is doing something other than technology from this 25 years. So these two persons in you. So what this technologist taught to non-technologist?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't quite catch that.
There are two people in you. How your professional life helped you in your personal life?
Okay. Yeah. So the two people that have helped me in my professional life, probably previous bosses. So previous bosses who have kept me right, because I used to use NuGet packages in C# quite a lot in my previous job, and I always used to update these NuGet packages on a daily basis. And my boss never told me this, but that's not what he wanted me to do. So one day he started shouting at me for telling me off for doing this thing every day that was wrong. And I said to him, well, why are you shouting at me? And why have you not told me why it's wrong? So I didn't understand what I was doing was incorrect. So I said to him, why don't you explain to me why it's incorrect rather than just let me make this mistake every day? Because I'm not learning. I didn't realize why I was doing it. So I actually learned that when you do something wrong, I always want somebody to tell me why. Not that I've done it wrong, but I want to understand why I've done it wrong so that I don't do it again. And it's quite important. It's quite an important lesson in life that you understand why it's wrong. Not just that it is wrong. You need to understand why it's wrong so that you kind of have a better grasp of what you're doing. And out with IT, I don't really know of anyone out with IT. Just my parents, really. My parents are always asking me how I'm getting on and what am I doing in the community and how am I helping people. So probably my parents still are the two people that in my life that out with technology keep me right. They're always asking how I'm getting on and what am I doing in the community. So for me, community is a big thing. I like to help people. So I get a lot of people reaching out to me saying, how do I get started in Azure? Or how do I do this exam? Or what do I need to learn? You know, that kind of thing. And that's big for me. I like being able to help because I'm 25 years further on than they are. They're just starting in their career. And I wish I could have asked people 25 years ago, what should I be doing? What should I be thinking about? So if I was to give advice to people now, definitely have a look at cloud stuff because cloud is going to be, well, it already is huge. It's not going to ever really go away, I don't think. There's lots of different roles within cloud. That's the thing. You don't have to be just a developer or an ops person. There's lots of different roles. But definitely get some cloud knowledge behind you. Try and understand the basics. It's quite a good thing to do just the fundamental exams because from that you'll understand what you like and what you don't like. You might do the DevOps exam and you like it, and you might do the coding exam and you might not like that. So you can work out what you want to do, but try and chisel out a career path as well. It's quite important. I was lucky to become a developer just through sheer luck, and then I worked at a bank that was starting to look at cloud when cloud was starting to be a big thing. And I was lucky enough to bump into someone who was looking for an Azure guy, and I basically took that job and started learning Azure. So I was really lucky. Yeah.
Do you spend time in understanding the architectures of other cloud architects?
I don't know. Do you talk about other clouds or?
The people who already created.
Yeah. So Azure has an Azure Architecture Center, which is a website in Microsoft Docs, and it is really good. If you have, let's just say you want to do a design around API management, for example, you can go into the browse the architecture part, type in the name of the service, and it'll give you example architectures. Now you learn a lot from that because you learn how to secure it, you learn how to do the storage, and it gives you an idea of what you need to do. So some of these designs will even think about what happens if you deploy to West Europe and West Europe region goes down, they'll cover disaster recovery on what you need to do to move to another region or to another, just backup plans and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I look at these quite a lot. They're very interesting. That's probably when a customer asks for a solution, that's the first thing I'll do. I'll go to the browse architecture part of the website and I'll put in what they're looking for. So when the customer wanted to change their service bus, I went on and typed in Azure Service Bus, and it gives you like 20 example designs on Azure Service Bus that from different companies and different solutions and different requirements, and you can kind of from that you can gather what you need and what you might not need. So it's really quite interesting. But it also covers the why you would use this service over that service. So in Azure, there's like different load balancers, and it will tell you that you should use this load balancer because the requirement is this. So that's quite cool. Sometimes if you just read about Azure has 7 load balancers, you won't know which one is the best option sometimes. So the Azure Architecture Center is brilliant. It's really, really good. Highly recommend it. It even gives you Visio diagrams that you can download and kind of look at as well. It's quite nice. It's really good, useful.
So in this 25 years, you learned a lot, and your mind is very fast in understanding the cloud concepts and find the solutions for it. So what is the least time that you take in order to find the solution for any cloud problem?
Well, we get 2 to 3 days to do the design, and I usually take that time because I want to try and understand what are the customer requirements, because every customer wants something slightly different. There isn't really one design that fits all. There isn't really a design that works for one customer, works for another. They're always wanting something slightly different. I always want to try and save them money, but I always firmly believe you should try and do what makes sense for them. A lot of companies want to move to AKS, Kubernetes inside Azure, but they don't understand containers. So I try and stay away from things like that when the customer doesn't really understand it. So it's not about speed for me. It's about trying to fit what the company wants and what the company can do. I've spoke to some customers who want to do Kubernetes in Azure, but don't understand how to support it. So I've said to them, like, well, if we put AKS into Azure for you, who's going to support it? Because you don't have any people who understand AKS. So that's not a good fit. So it's a kind of learning thing. You need to try and figure out, do they want us to support it? Do they want to support it? Sometimes we support, well, we do a lot of managed services, so we look after a lot of Azure environments for people. So that's fine, but some customers want to look after their own Azure environment. So I don't think it's a speed thing. I think it's just basically trying to fit what the customer needs with. It's also a learning curve because you need to make sure that what you're telling them is relevant and still relevant, because you might tell them that AKS version 2 is the way to go, but it's actually up to 2.04. You know what I mean? You need to check what's the best thing to do at that time, because all the services in Azure change regularly. It really is hard to keep up to date. So if I say like I'm going to put in Postgres SQL, for example, I have to go and check that what is the latest version and what does it support and what does it not support, because customers always have like small requirements that it needs to be encrypted at rest, for example. So one version might not work compared to the other. So I spend the time kind of looking into all of this for the first couple of days, and then I'll put the design together. And then I go back to the customer and just say, here's what I'm thinking you might need. What's your thoughts? And it's kind of a two-way exercise to try and get to what we think's good. But yeah, I love doing that. It's really good fun. It keeps you on your toes, keeps you busy, which is quite nice.
So what are the best compliments that you got in this 25 years as a technologist? And also how you'll feel, how you felt when you are unable to find solution for any problem that you faced, and how will be your thinking when you are in a failure mind state?
Yeah, so let me tackle that first. So I am all about networking. My when I was younger, my big sister said network as much as you can, and what she meant by that is find people who are clever, and find people who, if like I'm an Azure guy, so I should go out and try and find all the Azure people that are really clever in all the different areas of Azure. So I do that. If I want to speak to someone in networking, I know who the person is to go and ask. So I try and find people on Twitter and on social media. I follow all the Microsoft people. I follow all the blogs. I try and find as much information as I can, and become friends with these people so that I can ask them a question and they'll help me. So that's networking, and I think that's very important to do, no matter what job you're doing. If you were doing AWS, like if I moved to AWS tomorrow, I would start following all the AWS people that I can. I would look on Twitter, I'd find all the AWS solution experts, all the engineers, look at all the user groups, start going to user groups, and just start getting to know everyone. So that if I've got a question that I don't know the answer, I can say, right, well, I know that guy knows all about this. I'll go and ask him. So there's nearly every service in Azure, I know someone that I could go and ask and go, right, you know networking, tell me about this. Or you know AKS, what do I need to do for this? So that's very important. I always try and network. I see people on Twitter they follow loads of people, but they don't follow many people, but they have lots of followers, and I think that's weird. I always recommend you have as many followers as you can. You should try and follow as many people as you can, because you'll learn more. You'll see a lot more tweets and a lot more blog posts and a lot more content that you can learn from. And imagine walking into a party of 300 people and you know 5. I would like to walk into a party and know 300 people, because then you can learn and have conversations with everyone. I don't understand people who don't network. I think it's a very valuable skill to have. It's difficult, but it's worth learning to be able to network. It's even like when you go into a school class, try and learn and meet everyone and talk to everyone and become friends with everyone, because you'll learn a lot more from these people than you will if you only know a couple of people, without doubt. And the best compliment I've had, I don't know, I just like helping people. I think one of the biggest compliments I got was becoming an Azure MVP. You can only become an MVP if you're helpful to people in the community, which is a big thing. I love helping people because I'm not big-headed, but I've done some stuff that people haven't, and I can help people get on the same journey that I've been on. Like 4 years ago, I didn't know any Azure. Now I know quite a wee bit. No, I wouldn't say I know a lot, but I know a little bit. But if people are wanting to start learning Azure, they can reach out to me and I can say, like, do this and do that, and here's what I recommend, just on advice from what I've learned from doing it, basically. So yeah, biggest compliment is probably becoming an MVP, because that was really big.
So, what do you say at last? What do you say to the people who are into Azure Cloud and who are listening to you and watching listening this conversation from anywhere on this planet?
Yeah, I think definitely do hands-on learning. Try and imagine you wanted to be good at Kubernetes, right? If you spend an hour every night for a year, that's 365 hours of knowing AKS or Kubernetes. You're going to really know that subject well. So find the area that you're interested in. Try and find an area that you're passionate about. Like if you're a passionate developer, then obviously do development. If you're not sure what you want to do, look around and see what is interesting to you. The fundamentals exams you can start looking at, and if something's interesting, then have a look at that. Things like machine learning and data and AI, they're going to be huge going forward, so they're good things to learn. But any cloud skill is going to be there for a while. You're going to have a good pay, I would imagine, and a long-term job. The cloud isn't going to go away for a long. I mean, it's going to be here for forever, I think. It's going to change a lot, but you need to be able to adapt and change as you go. So you need to be a constant learner, which is difficult for some people. Some people have kids and families, and it's difficult to spend an hour a night. When I first started learning Azure, I was doing 2 hours every night. So I was kind of spending a lot of time doing it, but I learned a lot quickly. So my advice is that try and remain teachable. Try and remain humble as well. Don't be big-headed and just network. Try and find as many people who you can learn from as possible. There's so many good people in the Azure space, the Azure community. There's so many nice people that will be willing to help and you can learn from. And if you've any questions, there's always there's hashtag Azure Family, all one word, on Twitter, that people will always ping and reply. So if you ask a question and you're struggling with something in Azure, if you go on Twitter and write your question and then do hashtag Azure Family, people will reply to that. So it's a really great community of people. And they're all around the world. It's not just like one area. There's people from Ukraine and Australia and India and America and South America. There's people all over the world, all like us, trying to learn Azure and stay on top of it. But it's great. I love it. Really do love it. So yeah, that's my advice, is just and try and enjoy your job. Yeah.
So, do you provide any service do you want to share any web links of yours with my audience?
Yeah, I mean, my only really two links are probably my blog, which is just gregorsuttie.com. I don't really blog that much. I used to blog. I used to write blog articles because I had a terrible memory and I would forget things. So I would write it down and put a blog post out there so that the next time I forget, I can just go, oh, I've already written about it. But just reach out to me on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is Gregor_Suttie. So I can send you that and you can share it with your people. But if anyone's got any questions on Azure or any of the stuff that we've covered, they can feel free to reach out to me or even find me on LinkedIn, Gregor Suttie on LinkedIn. My name's unique, so I think I'm the only one, so it'd be quite easy to find me. And if you've got questions or wanting help, mentoring, how to become an MVP, how to learn Azure, what exams to start with, what exams not to do, anything like that, just feel free to reach out and I'll definitely reply. I always reply to people, so I'll go out my way to help people. Yeah.
So I'll put your links in the description of this video. People who finds our video on YouTube can see your link. So at last, what do you say about this conversation and about my questioning?
I love the questions. I love the fact that you're doing this. This is really good. I hope you do more of this. It's the fact that you reached out to me and asked me to come on, which was an absolute privilege. I really like that you're doing this, and I hope you have a really successful show, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of followers from doing this because it's really interesting to speak to different people. You'll probably be quite interested in speaking to me and speaking to other people. You probably learned quite a bit yourself. Doing podcasts is really exciting and quite interesting, talking to different people all around the world. We're all trying to learn. We're all trying to do our best. Azure is really difficult. It's a big subject. It can be overwhelming at times. It's hard to keep up to date, but it's fun. It's fun learning stuff because you can get a nice job and a nice salary if you spend time doing the right things, and if you dedicate some time to it, not a lot of time, you can pick a subject area and become a bit of an expert on it in under a year. I said that whole thing about spending 1 hour a day on, if you were doing, I don't know, Azure SQL, and you spent 1 hour a day, that's 365 hours in a year. That's quite a lot of knowledge you'll have. You know what I mean? There's people will come to you to ask questions about Azure SQL once you know all that stuff. So yeah, and also try and give back. It's a big thing that people with experience, there's always people that don't have the same experience that are always wanting to ask questions. So because I've been in IT 25 years, I like trying to help other people because it's my way of paying it back. I wish people could have helped me when I was younger, and one person did. But the fact that there's Twitter now is really good. You can reach out to people and get all sorts of help and advice. Yeah.
So one last question I want to ask you. One good quality that helped you and that made you to become whatever you are today.
Great question. I think so. One thing I always do is have goals, right? So you should have short-term goals and long-term goals. I had a long-term goal to learn Azure and become an MVP in Azure. Now that was 4 years ago. So I put a calendar above my monitor and I wrote MVP on it. So I had a bit of a goal in mind and I could see it every day. So perseverance is also a good thing. But I was motivated. I wanted to learn just because that's the kind of person I am. I like to learn new things and I like to learn and be able to help people. And I wanted to learn Azure so that I could help customers get into Azure and kind of help them. So helping people is my big thing. So that's probably that, and the attitude of a good attitude for wanting to learn is probably the thing I would say. Yeah.
So can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Absolutely. Yes. 100%. Yeah. Be delighted. That'd be
And
great.
also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet,
Of
social
course.
media, everywhere with your permission?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you, Greg. Keep going, keep doing what you love, keep inspiring people, keep training people, and I'm sure because of you, the cloud industry will get a lot of contribution.
Thank you, and you do the same. You keep interviewing people and then talking to people because it's good stuff, and then people will love watching that. So hats off to you as well. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You too. Thank you. Bye bye.